An elderly man, believing his son was taking him to a nursing home, gets out of the car to remain completely stunned. What did he see? This shocking twist that will leave you speechless. Also, please tell us where you're listening from, and if you enjoy stories like these, subscribe for more. Edmund Vargas, a 72-year-old widower, sat quietly in his small room in Austin, Texas, gazing through the window at the busy streets of the city below. He had always been a proud man, someone who cherished his independence. But now his body had weakened, his memory was becoming more confused, and his heart heavier. Living with his son Ricardo and daughter-in-law Carmen, Edmund felt like a shadow of the man he once was. Edmund had conceived a plan. He had decided he no longer wanted to be a burden. Guilt consumed him every time he saw the grandchild's room he now occupied, the hurried greetings his family gave him before leaving for work, and the meals brought by Esperanza, their neighbor. The idea of moving to a nursing home didn't seem so much like banishment as relief for everyone, but beneath his stoic exterior, Edmund longed for something he couldn't name. He didn't just feel abandoned, he felt useless. Edmund's life hadn't always been like this. His mind often wandered to San Antonio, where he and his late wife, Isabella, had built a life together in their modest wooden house. Isabella had brought warmth to his world, her laughter echoing in every corner of their home. Edmund had adopted Ricardo when he married Isabella. The child wasn't his blood, but from the first moment Ricardo called him Papa, Edmund had sworn to give him everything he could. Together, they transformed a humble home into a sanctuary, filled with love, hard work, and simple joy. Edmund had been a man of the earth, tending his garden with the help of Estrella, his faithful mare. But everything changed the night of the fire. One evening, Edmund lit a candle to chase away the darkness when a power outage plunged his house into blackness. Exhausted after a day of harvesting vegetables with Estrella, he dozed off on the couch. When he woke up, the air was thick with smoke. Neighbors broke down the door, dragging him to safety, but the house, his memories, Isabella's belongings, and their life together were reduced to ashes. When Edmund woke up in the hospital 24 days later, doctors told him he was lucky to survive. But he didn't feel lucky. He felt empty. When Ricardo brought him to Austin to recover, Edmund left behind not only his house, but also a part of his soul. Life in Ricardo's house wasn't what Edmund had hoped for. Ricardo and Carmen were absorbed in work and seemed distant, leaving Esperanza, the neighbor, to take care of his meals and needs. Though kind, Esperanza didn't hide her opinions. "They don't want you here, Edmund," she said one day, shaking her head. "It's the same everywhere. Once we get old, our children don't want to take care of us anymore." Those words haunted him. On his birthday, Edmund remained alone with a slice of cake that Esperanza had left him. Ricardo and Carmen had wished him a good day that morning but hadn't stayed to celebrate. The loneliness was suffocating. Edmund couldn't take it anymore. One evening, he approached Ricardo. "Take me to a nursing home," he said firmly. "Sell my land in San Antonio. Use the money to pay for it. I don't want to be a burden to you or Carmen." "Papa, not now," Ricardo replied with a sigh. "We'll talk about it later. I've had a long day." Edmund's frustration soared. "If you don't do it, I'll do it myself. I'll find a nursing home." Ricardo simply patted his shoulder and walked away, leaving Edmund feeling even more invisible. Days passed, and Edmund's pleas to be taken to a nursing home seemed to dissolve into the air. Every evening, he sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the worn photograph of Isabella he kept treasured in his wallet, whispering apologies to his wife for the burden he had become. His heart grew heavier day by day, the silence in Ricardo and Carmen's house amplifying his loneliness. Then, on a bright Saturday morning, everything changed. Ricardo entered Edmund's room carrying an immaculate white shirt, a pair of carefully folded pants, and a new set of toiletries. Carmen followed with towels and fresh sheets under her arm. "Pack your things, Papa," Ricardo said, his voice calm but unreadable. "We're going on a trip." Edmund froze, hands trembling as he clutched the photograph. The words echoed in his ears, filling him with a bittersweet mixture of relief and sadness. "Finally," he thought, "he's taking me." He nodded silently, not daring to meet Ricardo's gaze, fearing he might see pity, or, worse, guilt. He packed quickly, methodically, folding his few clothes with precision. His heart tightened when he placed Isabella's photograph on top of the pile, closing the suitcase with a finality that felt like goodbye. The car ride began in heavy silence, the engine's hum being the only sound. Edmund sat in the back, clutching his suitcase against him, knuckles white. Ricardo drove, eyes fixed on the road, while Carmen looked out the window, a slight smile playing on her lips. For Edmund, that smile seemed out of place, a hint of joy on a day he thought should be solemn. As they left Austin's city limits, the towering skyscrapers and busy streets gave way to rolling hills and farmland as far as the eye could see. The landscape seemed to blur into an indistinct haze, but for Edmund, every detail stood out intensely. The aging fences lining the road, the carpets of wildflowers dotting the fields, the solitary oak standing proudly against the sky. His visions reminded him of his younger years, the walks with Isabella through the countryside, their laughter filling the air as they imagined growing old together. Edmund's thoughts flew to the past. He remembered Isabella's laughter, the way it burst forth when he told one of his terrible jokes. He remembered Ricardo's first steps, the little boy stumbling to end up in his arms, his laughter echoing through their house. And he remembered his garden in San Antonio, the rich, earthy smell of freshly turned soil while he worked alongside Estrella to cultivate their crops. He let out a trembling sigh, eyes misty. He wasn't just leaving his family, he was leaving a life full of memories, a house that no longer existed, and the dreams he had shared with Isabella. Ricardo glanced in the rearview mirror, noticing the old man wiping his tears with a handkerchief. "You okay, Papa?" he asked, his tone both casual and concerned. Edmund quickly put the handkerchief back in his pocket and nodded weakly. "Yes, mijo, just tired." Carmen turned in her seat and smiled at him gently. "We're almost there. You'll feel better soon." Edmund nodded again, throat tight. "Almost there." Her words echoed in him. Was this the promise of relief or confirmation of his greatest fear? As the car climbed a winding road surrounded by dense trees, Edmund realized he no longer recognized the surroundings. His heart began to race. There was no house, no sign of civilization, only a few clearings in the woods letting sunlight filter through. The road seemed endless, stretching toward a lonely horizon. He swallowed hard, hands gripping his suitcase tightly. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "You'll see," Ricardo replied enigmatically, a faint smile on his lips. Edmund's mind raced with 1,000 assumptions. Did this road lead to an isolated facility, far from the city? Was this their way of leaving him behind, out of sight and out of mind? The car finally slowed, driving over gravel as it entered a clearing. Ricardo cut the engine and turned to Edmund, expression unreadable. "We're here, Papa." Edmund hesitated, body stiff, as Ricardo got out and opened the back door. He helped Edmund out of the car, guiding him gently while Carmen took the suitcase. Edmund adjusted his glasses, heart pounding. He squinted in the sunlight, expecting to see the dull, gray facade of a nursing home. Instead, his breath caught. Before him stood a house he recognized all too well. His house. But it wasn't the charred black shell he had last seen. It was completely restored, gleaming as if it had been torn from his memories and brought back to life. The white paint sparkled in the sunlight. The porch railings were sturdy and new, and the windows gleamed with surreal clarity. Edmund's knees buckled, and Ricardo quickly caught him. "Easy, Papa," he said softly. What is this?" Edmund stammered, his voice barely audible. Ricardo smiled, eyes bright. "Welcome home, Papa." As Edmund stood before the gleaming facade of his rebuilt house, his legs trembled, and he clung to Ricardo's arms for support. It wasn't just the house, it was the life it represented, a life he had thought reduced to ashes with its wooden beams. He blinked, trying to convince himself this wasn't a dream. "Come in, Papa," Ricardo said softly, leading him toward the porch. Carmen followed, carrying his suitcase. Edmund hesitated for a moment, his fingers touching the freshly painted railing. The smell of pine and varnish filled the air. Every step on the porch was surreal, like walking through a resurrected memory. The front door creaked open, revealing the interior. Edmund let out a muffled cry. The layout was familiar, yet everything looked new. Polished hardwood floors, walls painted in soft, warm hues, and furniture reminiscent of the cozy charm he had once shared with Isabella. On the mantelpiece, a single-framed photograph caught his attention, an image of him and Isabella on their wedding day, their smiles frozen in time. How? Edmund's voice broke as he turned to Ricardo. Ricardo motioned for his father to sit in his old armchair, restored and covered with the same fabric Isabella had once chosen. "Papa, we never planned to send you to a nursing home," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "We knew how much this house meant to you, so when it burned down, we made it our mission to rebuild it. We couldn't tell you because, well, we wanted it to be a surprise." Carmen intervened, placing her hand on Edmund's shoulder. "We used the land you loved so much as the foundation for something new. The neighbors helped too. Everyone wanted to help you." Ricardo rummaged through a drawer and pulled out an old, worn envelope. "Do you remember these papers you signed a few months ago?" Edmund nodded, frowning. "You said it was to sell the land." Ricardo shook his head, a slight smile on his lips. "No, Papa. Those were just building permits. We needed your approval to start the reconstruction. Every nail, every beam, everything is for you." Edmund's eyes filled with tears, breath caught. I thought I'd lost everything. Isabella, this house, everything." Ricardo handed him a thick photo album, its edges slightly charred but intact. "Not everything, Papa. Look." Edmund's hands trembled as he opened the album. Inside were photographs that had survived the fire, images of him and Isabella dancing on their anniversary, of baby Ricardo taking his first steps, and of Isabella planting flowers in the garden. The pages smelled slightly of smoke, but the images were vivid, overflowing with life. Edmund ran his fingers over a photograph of Isabella holding a basket of freshly picked vegetables, her smile radiant. "She loved that garden," he whispered, tears falling on the page. Just when he thought his heart couldn't take any more, a familiar sound reached his ears. A gentle whinny came from outside, pulling Edmund from his reverie. He froze, eyes wide. "Is that—" Ricardo smiled and gestured toward the door. "Come see." Edmund headed toward the porch, heart pounding. There, tied to a new post near the garden, stood Estrella, his beloved mare. The old mare, whose coat gleamed in the sun, sported a freshly brushed mane. Edmund's breath caught as Estrella whinnied again and pawed the ground as if calling to him. "Estrella!" Edmund exclaimed, tears now flowing freely. He rushed down the steps as fast as his legs could carry him. The mare turned her head, instantly recognizing her old friend. Edmund hugged her around the neck, burying his face in the animal's mane. "You're alive! I thought I'd lost you too." Carmen joined Ricardo on the porch, watching the emotional reunion. "We found her a few weeks after the fire," she explained. "She had wandered to the outskirts of town. The neighbors took care of her until we could bring her back." Edmund stood there a long time, his hand gently stroking Estrella's mane. The warmth of the mare's body, the reassuring presence of the house behind him, and that of his family, filled him with a deep and unshakable peace. He turned to Ricardo, his voice choked with gratitude. "You did all this for me?" Edmund asked, voice trembling. Ricardo nodded. "You've done so much for me, Papa, for us. This is just a small way to show you how much we love you." Edmund shook his head, overwhelmed. "This isn't a small thing, mijo. This is everything." That evening, as the sun set on the horizon, painting the sky in orange and pink hues, Edmund sat on the porch with Ricardo and Carmen. Estrella grazed peacefully in the yard, and the distant song of crickets filled the air. Edmund clutched the photo album to his chest, a smile forming on his lips. For the first time in years he felt whole. His heart, once heavy with loss and loneliness, now overflowed with joy. The house he thought he had lost forever had been returned to him, not only in brick and wood, but in love, effort, and family. "I was wrong," Edmund said softly, breaking the silence. "I thought I was a burden, but you showed me I'm absolutely not." Ricardo took his father's hand. "You're not a burden, Papa. You're our foundation." Edmund looked at his son, then at the house, then at Estrella grazing peacefully. For the first time in years he allowed himself to believe it. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Edmund hugged Ricardo. "I'm sorry, mijo," he said. "I doubted you and thought you didn't care about me." Ricardo shook his head. "You were never a burden, Papa. We just wanted to give you the house you loved. You deserve it." That night, Edmund settled into his rebuilt house, heart full for the first time in a long while. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, casting a golden glow on the freshly renovated house, Edmund found himself in the middle of the living room, eyes scanning every corner. Every detail, every board, every photograph on the wall told a story of love, devotion, and a son's unwavering commitment to his father. Ricardo stood beside him, a quiet smile on his face. Carmen had excused herself to prepare dinner, leaving the two men alone in this space charged with decades of memories. Edmund's throat tightened. He turned to Ricardo, voice trembling. "Mijo, I don't know what to say. I doubted you. I thought you didn't care about me, that you wanted to get rid of me." Ricardo's eyes softened, and he stepped forward, placing a firm but gentle hand on his father's shoulder. "Papa, you were never a burden, not once. Everything we did, the late nights, the weekends spent building this house, it was because we loved you, because you deserved to be happy." The sincerity in Ricardo's voice was like balm on Edmund's wounded soul. Overwhelmed with emotion, Edmund hugged his son tightly. He held on as if letting go might undo everything, as if this embrace could express all the gratitude he couldn't put into words. "I'm so sorry," Edmund whispered, his voice muffled against Ricardo's shoulder. "I let my fears and loneliness blind me. I should have trusted you." Ricardo pulled back just enough to look his father in the eyes. "You've done so much for me, Papa. You raised me, you loved me, and you gave me a life I never would have had without you. This is the least I can do in return." What do you think of Ricardo's decision to rebuild his father's house instead of sending him to a nursing home? Would you have done the same, or would you have handled it differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know your opinion on this touching story. Thank you for listening if you enjoyed this story, and we'll see you in the next video.